How's it going, everyone? Today we're going to be covering a quick guide of how to play Ambessa. Now, even though this champion's only been out for a couple of days now, I still want to make this video to help steer you in the right direction for what you should be building, how to play your lane, the team fights, all of that good stuff. So if you're somebody who's really interested in picking up this champion or just improving your champion mastery, then this guide is perfect for you. First up, we're going to be covering the runes. Now, the keystones are pretty straightforward. You are going to be taking Concrete every single game. I have seen some ambassadors experiment with Electrocute, but in my opinion, Conquer is just superior in every single game for top lane ambassador. Now, as for the runes in this tree, you're going to be taking Triumph or Absorb Life depending on our matchup. However, I do recommend Triumph 95% of the time. Only take Absorb Life if you absolutely need it. This rune is really nerfed, where the sustain is very low, but in matchups like Cannon or Aurora, low sustain is better than no sustain, so Absorb Life with D-Shield and Second One can help in those really hard ranged lane bully counterpicks. Now, as for Presence of Mind, I'd say never take this rune in my opinion, as you get more than enough energy restoration. As long as you're getting auto attacks in between your combos, you're not going to need this rune. Now, for Legend, you should take Haste every game. I did try Alacrity a lot, as I did feel like she'd be similar to Aatrox in the sense where he uses auto attacks quite well, same with Mordekaiser. So Aatrox and Mord, even though they are spell-based users, you still take Alacrity on those champs pretty much every game, as they use auto attacks really well, but it's really hard to build attack speed on them. So I thought Ambassador would be the same, but Haste is just better on her as she is more so a spell user than them, and her cooldowns are a lot more spammable and lower CD than theirs. You're not really going to get a lot of rotations off of spells on those champs, even though you took Haste, but on Ambassador you will. So definitely take Haste over Alacrity on her. And as for the final rune, Last Stand is going to be the way to go. I'd say cut down could work maybe into easy tanky matchups, but because Ambassador's early game is quite weak, I'd say Last Stand is definitely going to be what you should just take every game, and she uses this rune really well. With Eclipse and your W shield, you can fight for a long time, even low HP, so definitely the way to go. Now, as for our secondary runes, I would take Resolve almost every single game with Shield Bash and then Bone Plating or Second Wind, depending on your matchup. Shield Bash is just OP, is a rune right now, and Ambessa uses it really well. You could take Demolish into maybe some easy matchups like an Ornn or something like that, but I'd still take Shield Bash as the early trading power is so nice, and Ambessa's not too strong to the point where you're blowing up tower in front of people in a lot of matchups. Now, as for this rune, bone plating into matchups that use it really well, so like a Jax or a Riven, they can't pop bone plating without fully engaging onto you, so that'll be the way to go. And second win into matchups that can pop it, so like a Gangplank or a Vlad, or maybe even a matchup like an Olaf where they can pop it with Q. Second one can be a lot better in those types of lanes. You could take bone plating in matchups like Olaf and just force trades around the cooldown. That type of matchup is more optional, but definitely want bone plating into matchups that can't pop it whatsoever, and second one into heavy poking lanes. Now you can take the domination tree with Sudden Impact and Ultimate Hunter into matchups that are a bit easier. So maybe a tank lane, like a Tahm Kench or something like that. However, I still think the green tree is better in most of the matchups, especially volatile or close ones. So only go domination if you're really confident on Ambassador, you got a lot of games in, and you're in a matchup that's quite free as well. And as for the three rune shards down the bottom, I do recommend attack speed over adaptive and haste. Haste is just too weak early game, and you're already a weak early game champ. And attack speed feels really nice for your early last sitting, farming under tower, and just trading in general. And then adaptive force as your secondary, as it works well with your abilities. And flat HP into volatile matchups like K Camille, Fiora, Riven, champs like that, and scaling HP into easier tank lanes. Moving on to the summoner spells, and this section is relatively straightforward, as you're just going to be taking teleport and flash every single game. Ambassador as a champion is relatively weak in the early game, so you don't want it to be really volatile and playing for early kills level 2, level 3, like you would on maybe a Fiora or a Riven. You want to be getting to item spikes unscathed and spiking really hard at 1 to 2 items, so taking TP and Flash is going to be way more consistent for every matchup that you play. Now with that being said, if you are playing in perhaps a lower elo bracket below Platinum, and you feel really confident in a scrappy volatile matchup, maybe you're versus a Fiora or a Gwen and you're really confident, you can take Ignite and fight it out. I'd just recommend going TP and Flash in every single game, unless you're playing in games, game quality, or a matchup that you feel really confident that you can get kills with Ignite. That's going to be perfectly fine, don't let me stop you, but you should default to TP and Flash in the majority of your matchups regardless. Next up, we have the item builds. Now, you're going to be starting Doran Shield in the majority of your matchups, as you are quite weak in the early game, so the extra sustain can be very valuable. But you can go Deep Blade in relatively easy matchups, so champions like Dr. Mundo or Scion, you can go Deep Blade and give yourself a little bit more fighting power. But if you are obviously volatile or a heavy poke lane, D-Shield will be the way to go. Now, for your first buy, you want to be stacking AD, so as many long swords as you can carry, or a pickaxe similar to a Riven. You don't really want to be delaying it for tier 2 boots if you can avoid it, as you're so mobile in the lane anyway. With your dashes, you don't really need the movement speed, but you can go tier 2s early if the value is really high. So if you visit Tryndamere top, Graves jungle, something like that, Tabbies just go crazy, or a Cannon top, maybe Lilia jungle, you can go Mercs, but most of the time, you just want to be getting Eclipse as fast as you can and not delaying that. Now, as for our boots, you can go tabbies most of the time. The only reason I have them highlighted is just because at the moment, for top lane, tabbies feel really good, Swifties feel okay, and every other boot feels horrible. So Merc Treads are so nerfed, you should only build these if you need it. So if you verse a high CC comp, maybe they have Sejuani, Leona, Lissandra, something crazy, maybe a Mumu jungle, champs like that, you can just, you have to, go Merc Treads in that case, but avoid building them if you can. And Swifties is just if you base with enough gold for it and there's no other value boots, or if you verse an Olaf or a Nasa, something like that, Swifties can be quite good. Now, for our first item, you will be going Eclipse most of the time. This gives you insane amounts of combat power, a lot of dueling power as well, and you're gonna need it into champs like Jax or Riven that are fighting and forcing onto you. And I have some examples at the end of the section of the build path you'd go into certain matchups. However, in these really volatile lanes or just the majority of your games, you do want to be opting into an Eclipse. Now, you can go Profane into matchups where they're not going to be forcing onto you that much. So maybe like a Gangplank, especially squishy champions. So like a GP, you can go Profane or a Cannon and just play to one-shot the wave and have a higher burst, higher one-shot threat into them. It's going to be a little bit better than Eclipse. And Rev Hydra is going to be your way to go into neutralizers or tanks. So champs like Gragas, champs like Tahm Kench, you can just keep one-shotting the wave and healing to full HP. Her ulti does scale a little bit with lifesteal as well. So this item does feel quite good in that sense. I wouldn't prioritize it over Eclipse if you had to choose between the two, as Eclipse just gives you so much early combat power and the item is so cheap. Now, for our second item, initially I assumed Spear of Shojin was going to be the way to go most of the time, and it should still be your second item if you go Eclipse a lot of the time. However, Profane Hydra is definitely really powerful as well. So Eclipse into Profane, the way I see Ambassador at the moment, especially with how you build, is similar to Lethality Aatrox. So Eclipse into Lethality is definitely the best build at the moment. Spear of Shojin is what you go second when you have Profane or Ravenous Hydra as your first item. You should always go Shojin second in that type of game, and you can go second with Eclipse first into really beefy, tanky comps. But if you go Eclipse into Profane as your standard build, that's going to give you the most success in the long run. Now, you can go Cyclo Sword. The reason I've got it there is really certain matchups. So maybe you're up against a Jace, who is a ranged squishy champ, but he can force onto you as well. So if it's a champion like Jace, you can go Eclipse for the early power, and then Cyclo Sword to fight him inside and keep him locked down. Can give you a lot of strong dueling power into heavy range comps, but most of the time, Eclipse into Profane will be the way to go if you're ever unsure. Moving on to a third item, now Shojin's going to be the way to go most of the time. So Eclipse into Profane into Spear of Shojin, definitely a key build for him. But if you've already got Shojin at this point, you can build another lethality item like the Edge of Night. That can be a great pickup as well. Looks very similar to the lethality Aatrox build, which is really good on her. However, if you do need to be a bit more beefy, you can go DD or more. So DD into really heavy AD comms. So I would prioritize the top three. So Shojin into Edge of Night into Sterak's in order for items that you're going to be building most of the time, but full AD comps or heavy AD, DD is going to be great, and more into heavy AP bursty comps will be good as well, or Sterak's is a general all-rounder. So Sterak's is a great third item if you did the Bruiser build, so Eclipse into Shojin into Sterak's is going to be great, but if you go Profane second a lot of the time, or maybe even Cyclo Sword, you want to have an extra lethality item in there as well. And for our last two items, a lot of the time it is just going to be defensive, so Sterak's you can go GA as well, as you're going to be quite squishy, DD or more, similar reasoning to before, or Edge of Night as kind of a filler item at this point, where there's no standout. I don't really need Sterak's or GA at this point. I don't really need MR. I can just pick up an Edge of Night to give myself a bit more extra damage, but most of the time, by the time you get into your 4th, 5th items, you just want a bit more defense. Now I have a couple of examples here of full builds that you would do into certain archetypes of top lane champs. Now keeping in mind the team comp as a whole is also a factor for what you build, but for the most part if you are up against a champion that's going to be diving onto you and trying to punish you and brawl you 1v1, champs like Jax, Camille, Fiora, this build is the way to go. And if you're up against a lane bully squishy champion like a Kennen, a Vladimir, Cassiopeia, champs like that, then the full lethality with the Spirit Trojan mixed in there and some defensive items later on is also going to be great. Or if you're into that beefy neutralizer, really hard to punish champion like a Malphite or a Gragas, then Rev Hydra Shogun, more of a bruiser build for yourself, is going to be the best build. Once you have Ravenous Hydra, you can just keep pushing in waves under tower, maybe even poke the tower or poke them under it, and it's really easy to get a big CS gap against these types of champions. Moving on to the laning phase. Now I have a couple of examples here of key concepts I want to teach you for laning on Ambassador to help you on your journey as you're learning the champion. And the first one is going to be aim to take 100 to 0 trades in the early portions of the lane. It can be really tempting because this champion's abilities are so fun and so flashy to make you really volatile. The way I'd place her is halfway between an Aatrox and a Riven. However, on Riven, you want to make it really volatile and brawl quite hard early, but on Aatrox, you just want to take nice 100 to 0 trades, stay high HP and poke them down, abuse your spell, so Ambassador is no different. So we can see here up against Camille, my goal here is to conserve HP and poke her down with my range abilities and pick up as much farm as I can and re-trade onto her. So if she plays aggressive and comes onto my side of the lane, I'm going to bash her down. But if I don't want to go onto hers and tank minions and dash onto her and make it too scrappy, because that's not how my champion functions in the early game. So here, she tries to E me straight away, and I'm able to space her out. You can see, pop her bone plating, run away, and here trade one auto for hers. I've still got good fundamentals for laning. I want to be popping Camille's passive, and then here use the bush as well, and get an extra auto. So not a bad trade. I managed to pop her bone plating and her passive without taking too much damage, and my D shield will regen the most of it for me. So here you can see Q, click away, Q2, click away. Nice short 100 to 0 trades. I'm not queuing and dashing forward and letting her poke me with grasp. Q into click backwards, so abusing my mobility from my dashes, but not looking to make it too volatile and take much damage myself. So there, I traded an auto because she came onto my side, like we talked about here. I am trying to click onto it and punish her for farming as well. I'm not going to sit back and do nothing, but you can see I'm making her fight me on my side of the wave, and I'm trading and getting my passive proc as well. So already off to a really good start in this matchup versus Camille. And then here, I'm just trying to play around her passive a bit, just pick up as much farm and hit the wave as much as I can. Even though she might get level 2 first if she played for it, I don't want to be giving her hard level 2 first. I want to be hitting the wave as much as I can. So here we can see, walk up Q back, bait out her passive as well, wait for the passive to drop, auto Q, click back into the bush. You see a lot of my trading patterns is kiting away and not making it too volatile, not dashing into it and making it too scrappy. So there you can see it's working quite nicely, utilizing the bush as well. You can see level 1, I came into the bush here, and that trade there I came into the third bush. So trying to abuse my gap closer, dashing into bushes and drop her thing as well. So here she eat onto me, so I skilled W second. W second's the way to go, as you're going to be taking shield bash. You can go E second if you're solo killing someone maybe, if you shoot on them really hard level 1, but W level second for that high HP mindset that we have, 100-0 trading is going to be more optimal. So yeah, we W, we auto, and then here, Q, auto, Q, auto. So you can see, because I took nice 100-0 trades early game and chipped away at her HP bar while staying high HP myself, when she did get to that timer, her level 2 spike to all in me, I had a big enough HP deficit, as you can see right now, that I was actually able to fight her back and kill her. Now, even though for the early portions of the lane, I do want you to prioritize having a stable early game and staying high HP, trimming your opponent down, there does get a point where Ambassador spikes in the lane, very similar to an Aatrox, and that's when you could go. And in my opinion, around level 7 is when she starts to get really strong. Level 5 is not a bad spike at all, but level 7 is when you really start to come online, especially if you have a little bit of a lead. So in this game here, I've got a lead against Camille, we're level 7. To be honest, looking at this back, I should have spaced out this Q2. That was a bit troll, but you can see here my mindset shifted coming back to lane now compared to how we played the 1 to 3. So now I'm going to be heavy trading. So we can see very shortly, trying to keep my Conqueror stacks up as well. So Q auto, I'm dashing forward onto it now and making it really volatile, but still spacing out her Q2. So you want to be playing around your opponent's abilities still, trying to space out the Q2 or dodge the Aatrox Q, whatever you're up against with your dashes, space the Camille E as well. You can see that I'm clicking towards her with the intention. I want to bait your E. So look at these clicks here. So I click onto her now, I'm going to hit you, I'm going to hit you. I click back, pretend I'm leaving, click onto her. So a little micro movement to put pressure on her that I'm going to fight. But you can see, look at my mouse right now. Before she even E's, I'm already planning to jump back and bait out her E. And that's exactly what we did here, and we did manage to get that bait. And then we can just dash onto her head right now and force really hard onto her. So we can see once you get around level 7 with a bit of AD under your belt, you can start to really trade and make it volatile in the early portions of this lane, or the later on portions of this lane, as long as you're not behind. In my opinion, Ambassador is one of the champions that struggles the most with being behind, so it's really important that you maintain even or ahead consistency. Once you get to the level 6, level 7 spike with pickaxe and some longswords, then you can start to play way more aggressive and bully your opponent down like in this game. So we'll go through one more example of a Korean ambassador player. This guy's having the most success at the moment in Korean solo queue, and I learned a lot from watching his lane, so I wanted to showcase how you can play a matchup if the enemy top laner is also weak level 1. Because even though Ambassador's 1 to 3, not the strongest, and you want to be playing for later spikes, if you versus a champion that's also a bit weaker than you, then you can look to punish. So a cool trick he does consistently with Ambassador here is your Q1 is actually very hard to hit on this champion. So he'll Q1 on the wave, use that as a gap closer to get close to him, Q2, and then click back. So you see it very shortly here. You can see he dashes forward, just gets the Q2 to pop bone plating and poke, and then dashes away. That's something he does pretty much every time that he has Q up level 1, because Q1 is so hard to hit, and if you walk towards your opponent trying to get in range, they can just poke you down. So you'll see very shortly, when his Q comes back up, he'll look to do the exact same thing again. He actually hit his Q1 that time, Nah gave range, but the pattern is very similar. So again, when his Q is down, playing really respectful, not taking any unnecessary damage, and waiting off his cooldowns. When Na clicks on him, he clicks backwards, doesn't want to get poked down for free. So you can see very shortly his next Q, Qs the wave, dashes forward, auto, Q2, and clicks back. So nice little short trades, not overextending them for too long. And now that he's level 2, he'll skill up his W very shortly, like we talked about, using that shield bash and abusing your W shield for taking nice 100-0 trades. And here you can see very shortly, he's going to be looking to trade onto the NASA Q, click back. If he can go for the Q1 versus a melee champion as they go for a last hit, they will. So we can see now becomes a melee champion and has to walk up for this minion. So he's guarding. If you touch this minion, I'm going to Q you. So that's how you're able to hit Q1. You need to be standing next to the minion that they want last hit and hitting it. Otherwise, the range is just way too short to proactively use on them unless you're guarding the minions like that. So now you can see he's respecting the Na. Now he's trying to get level 3 for his all-in. And now so dashes in, uses W hop to dodge the Na W. Tries to hit the minion a little bit too. Tries to dodge the Q, but he was unsuccessful. Gets level 3 from the minion. And now Q into dash, auto, E, dash, auto, Q2, dash. So you can see the pattern. You often want to be using Q1 into E into Q2. So they're slowed for the Q2. And Q1 into E just feels a lot smoother as a combo as well. So we'll play that one more time on normal speed. We can see here, because he was hitting the wave the whole time, he was able to get really close to getting level 3, so he could actually get it during the skirmish, and take down now with a really nice combo and good use of abilities. Moving on to abilities, tips, and tricks. Now, because Ambessa is a pretty new champ, we don't have all the combos and all the cool tricks figured out yet, but there are some that I can give you. So as for your maxing, you're going to be maxing Q first, into E, into W. I've been asked why not max W when the shield is so big, but as you can see here, putting an extra point in W, 387, doesn't increase the shield size at all, it only decreases cooldown. So same with the E, but increases damage as well as cooldown, so it's definitely worth maxing E as your second ability. Now, the coolest trick you can do is Q Flash. Not only does it reposition where your Q is coming from, but you can actually Q Flash and change the aiming. So you can see here, I'm going to be aiming my Q onto this dummy, but if I Q Flash, it's going to slash on this direction and reposition me. You can also do the same with Q2. So I'll show you right now, Q2, we're going to be using it here, and you can reposition not just the way Ambassador's facing, but the direction your ability goes as well. Now, we talked about the next step in the laning section a little bit, but I always recommend going Q into E before you use Q2. And the reason for that, instead of just smashing Q twice, is it feels a lot smoother because after I use Q1, you'll see I'm locked out of Q2 for a little bit. I can't use Q2 for that little 0.1 second duration. You can kind of see there, or 0.5, whatever it is. But if I go into Q1 into E, then it feels a lot more smoother. Q1, auto E, and then you can Q2. But make sure you're trying to weave in autos into between all your spells. So I've seen some ambassadors dump the Q, E, Q. But of course, every spell that we use, if we can, we want to be weaving in an auto in between, just so your DPS is a lot higher and you'll never drop out of energy. Also, a way to make your burst a lot faster, so getting your abilities off quicker with the cost of mobility, is making sure your dash is clicked onto you instead of max range. So you can see if I Q and then click max range, really big dash. But if I Q and then click my character, it's a really short dash. So that means if you're fighting someone, maybe you want to be bursting them before you die, you're low HP, the mobility doesn't matter that much. You can just do quick, really short dashes, clicking near your character, so that you don't dash too far. Now, as for a really big tip in my opinion for Ambassador's ulti, because it's quite a unique ability, it's a really thin long-range skill shot, and especially because he's a new champ, we don't have the max range figured out yet. Go into your settings, keep your everything the same, of course you want to be using Smart Cast, but go down into the settings here, go into Normal Cast, and change spell 4 into Shift R. You can do whatever you want, you can do a mouse button if you want, but Shift R will bring up the indicator like this, so that if you're approaching a team fight from max range, maybe you're trying to ulti people over the wall, you can make sure that you're not out of range for the ability and aim it a lot more nicely. And as for a general combo to give you before you go for a 1v1 all-in or maybe a team fight, where you want to be leading with ulti into auto, Q, auto, E, auto, Q, auto, W, auto. So you want to be weaving in a dash and an auto in between every spell if you can. Sometimes you might just want to blow abilities for bursting or put your W up early for the shield, but for the most part your combo is going to look like this. So ulti into auto, Q, E, Q, W, mixing in an auto in between every spell. I might have missed one in there, but you can see for the most part, you're trying to weave in an auto between every single ability. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're actually getting every auto there. So it's a lot easier than it looks, to be honest. This is a very smooth champ to play in. You should still practice it and practice to a little bit, get the combos down, just practice the general combo and the trading patterns. But you can see once you weave in autos in between every spell, you can increase your DPS significantly. Next up, we're going to be covering the mid game, and the best way to explain how to play the mid game on Ambassador is to treat it as if you're playing a champion like Aatrox or Renekton or Mordekaiser, where with Aatrox being the best example, you spike extremely hard at 1 to 2 items, so that's when you want to be getting your best work done and speeding up the game. However, you are not a champion like Malphite or Ornn, where you just want to group up with your team and engage. You still want to get XP and farm and create side lane pressure. So here I want to be pushing in on the opposite side of the next objective. So in this game it's Baron, so I want to be pushing in bottom, using my strong dueling ability to make somebody respond to me, and then looking to create a 5v4 team fight. So here I push in bottom and make somebody respond, and keep in mind this doesn't mean I'm never going to hit a tower on Ambassador. What it means is that that's not your priority. If your opponent doesn't respond to you, and you can get a free tier 2 and give an air dragon, or the fight already looks bad, maybe your teammates got caught out and you're in front of the tower anyway, sure, you can break the tower, but your priority should always be, if nothing bad is happening, push in the wave, make your opponent respond, and look for a 5v4 team fight. That's exactly what I do here. I push in Pantheon, I respond here, so it would be better if it wasn't Pantheon, of course the global ulti, but I'm able to get a good flank. You can see the shift R there to guarantee I can hit my R onto their backline, kill the way, and we're able to get a great 5v4 team fight because of the pressure I created down at bottom. And finally, we're going to be covering the team fighting, and if there's one way I can describe how to play Ambassador in a team fight best, it's going to be treat it like you're playing Lethality Aatrox. So for those of you who haven't seen my guide or even played much Aatrox yourself, don't know much about him, you want to be flanking as much as you can. You want to be attacking from a side or a flank angle, because a high damage champion, especially if you build a Profane Hydra or a Cyclo Sword like I have in this game, it's really hard for them to ignore you on the backline, and you're so mobile and hard to pin down, that's really hard for them to turn on you instead. So we can see here, I don't want my team to be near me, I want to be looking for this flank. You can see I'm getting a deep flank around them and making it really annoying for them. So my team is in the river fighting down here, their little stack of 4, and I'm making it really hard. It's so hard for Xerath or Varus or anyone or Ryze to play the fight out like this. They're trying to chase me and burn spells, but you can see how mobile I am. I can hop around the fight. So Lee Sin, Ryze, everyone's chasing me, and it allows my team to get a really good engage on their backline. So we can see Ryze and Xerath, they wasted time marking me, so now I can just ulti back into the flank and easily pick up this Ryze kill. So you can see the threat of me in that position, even though I didn't really do a lot in that fight. I did kill the Ryze, but other than that, my Nico got the engage. But the threat of me attacking from this angle split up their formation. They were grouped up as a nice little 5-stack. If I was grouped up on my team, it would just be a 5v5 headbutt, better bot lane wins. But because I can flank from this position, put so much pressure onto them, and it's really hard for them to lock me down as I'm so slippery, I created a lot of space and pressure in this fight, and made it really hard for them to play until I found my time to strike. Alright, everyone, that's it for now. And one thing I want you to keep in mind, just in case you're a little bit disappointed, I do plan to make a fully in-depth ambassador guide on the same quality as my other ones, stretching up to potentially 2 hours long, going into full detail into everything. But as of right now, she's only been out for a couple days, so I definitely need a few weeks, maybe even a full month, to really build my mastery up on this champion and learn all the finer details before I can make that guide. But for now, hopefully this helps you out with learning the champion, and I'll see you all for the next one.